So yeah, my education bounced around. I loved actually being in school. I was just too poor to stay there. But I was so I went into I didn't know for the first 2 years what I wanted to do. So I took everything. But I was influenced by a chemistry teacher and just on the impact of him as a teacher. And I thought, man, I'm not sure I really like this subject, but I really like the way he teaches it. So I dove in. And and thought that was going to be my endpoint career. And like I said, like I was mentioning earlier, is like, man, you get into saying, well, what's the real endpoint of this track? And I knew I loved being in a different situation all the time, like new beginnings, new starts, new endpoints. And at that point in my life, it was houses. And all residential construction. We built a bunch of McDonald's, we built gas stations, we did other it was all small construction. But you'd see it start, you'd see it end, and there'd be new people, new faces, new individuals that came in and out of those jobs. And to me, that was wide open experience, and it was dynamic, and it moved a lot. And so, doing an about face in college and saying, man, how do I make this more than building? And like I mentioned, my dad's a carpenter and still is working. He's 70 years old, and he's still like, he's officially retired, but he still goes to work every day. And now he's actually working for people that work for him and just enjoying it. And so for me, my education was much more. And even after I graduated college, I went to Arizona State. They have a construction program there. At that time, it was the most well-funded program in the entire engineering college. They had all kinds of companies, sponsors, and scholarships to fund education without a whole lot of workup. And so that was actually a real nice benefit. My purpose, though, when I left, I was like, man, I'm going to go and work for a couple years and justify my degree. But then I'm going to get a pickup truck and a compressor and a generator, and we're going to go back and frame houses and just be in business for myself. And really, the main deviation on that was I got involved. I went to work for a company called W. O'Neill at the time, and we built it was a golf resort project. And anyway, it was just like when you're enjoying something and you're in the middle of it. I had a great time on that job, and went to another job and had a great time on that job, and then went to work for a company that's based out of Redwood City here. But I actually went to the East Coast for them, and it was DPR construction. Again, like just wonderful experiences through it. I was like, speaking of different backgrounds, construction is so full of different backgrounds, and I feel like it's representative of all that is. In many ways, things that formed our country, in that opportunity was based on a lot of ethic, a lot of merits, a lot of hard work. And that's what construction still, the barrier to entry is very low. But the sustaining in it does require a lot of healthy hard work. For sure, because it's easy to get in, and it certainly is easy to lose it and get out too. But I remember when I was in DC, that project I was on, the director of that project, his degree was in Latvian history. So the background, again, very diverse, not a straight line track. And I love the fact that the industry allows a lot of liberty in terms of come in if you're focused on what you're doing and focused on doing a good job and doing quality work. It's not a pedigreed industry. You don't need to have a big resume that espouses all the things that you've done or not done. And really there's a lot of quick reward for focus and hard work and diligence. So anyway, I would say, you'd asked the question, Chris, on credentials for the job. And I was just alluding to the fact that there's not really a list of credentials. Even in our company, Turner Construction, there's a general statement around, required to have a bachelor's degree or whatever. I will say in my own experience, when I joined the company in 2002, the manager I worked for had an 8th grade education, and he was by one of the best managers I've ever worked for. And so, again, in this industry, I think there's a lot of reward around. It's not about who you are or where you came from, but it's what are you able to do and what are you doing and what have you. And there's tons of opportunity for brand new beginnings too. It's like I said, you get done with one project and you're in with another team, and it's a whole new team, new bit of work, new perspective. And so it's a continual chance for reinvention. O'Neill's a large firm too. They had an office, they're out of Chicago. They had an office in Phoenix that I went to work for,
And to do that, did they do heavy construction as well?
They did. Now, for us, heavy construction often refers to civil, horizontal, flat work construction, but versus vertical commercial
Right.
Type buildings. They were in vertical commercial. They didn't do road work and stuff, but yeah, they did large projects. It's a great story. When I left DPR, I had just gotten married, and my wife was working as a traveling nurse. I'll try to keep this short, but anyway, at that stage in life, no children. And I said, well, if we're ever and we were not ever going to live in DC as a full-time, that was our, it's like, man, we probably not going to stay here. So I said, well, we'll have to pick 4 places around the country. And for this next year, I'll just get whatever work. This was in 2002. It was right after 2001. It was right after 9/11. And so I said, well, I'll just try to stay connected to my, quote, career. And if I can, I can't. But it was always kind of all I've ever done is construction. So I was like, well, if I don't find a job similar to what I'm doing right now, it'd be kind of cool just to do something else. And it was all in 4-month increments. So anyway, coming to Turner Construction was in Nashville, Tennessee. And my little spiel would be, here's my resume, but I don't need to do this. I've been a carpenter. I can do whatever. And I'm only going to be here for 4 months. So I don't expect to do what's on the resume. And we were self-performing concrete on a vertical high-rise building there in Nashville. And they called me and said, they said, hey, if you don't mind, if you want to make sure all the concrete embeds for this building go in the right spot, we'll put you to work as a carpenter. And they said, that sounds great. And so for $18 an hour, I went to work for a carpenter for Turner Construction. And so there was I'd never worked 40 hours a week for the last 4 years for anybody. I was a salaried employee, and it was always a bunch more time. So they were very strict on saying you can't work any overtime and whatever. So I would go home. I didn't give me a laptop. I had my own laptop, and we were struggling with the overall schedule and the job and some different things going on. So my wife was working nights and stuff. So I just worked beyond what I was supposed to be doing. Always notifying them that, hey, I'm not sure, this isn't an overtime thing. I just am helping because it seems easy to help. But anyway, I went to Alaska that summer, but they made an offer to come back and act as the superintendent on that job. And so just one thing, that was my first experience. And then got asked to take on a management position for the next job. Wasn't planning on that. I wanted to get to be a good superintendent. I didn't feel like I was one, but anyway, went into another position and then became a project executive after managing a couple of jobs. And then up until last year was the operations manager for us here in the Bay Area. I came out to California, actually. I spent 8 years in Nashville, Tennessee, and 5 years in Kentucky, and about 2 years in North Carolina. But
all with Turner?
Yeah, all with Turner.
Uh-huh.
And so then I came out here in 2015, very end of 2015. Actually, I moved in 2016, and have been in California ever since. So that's a brief history. for me, like I never planned on being a GM. Uh, I never, so I feel like, you know, like that from the very first job when I left school, I thought that was going to be my last job, working for a company. And really all the way through, like, I feel like it's a good mind. There's a little bit of a benefit to that mindset, because if we're in our, whatever we're currently doing in life, for work, and if we think about, you know, it will hit right now, this might be my last conversation with Chris. What am I going to put into it? What am I going to say? What am I going to not say? And so for work, I feel like it's the same way. Like, I think we as a society get really hung up on what's next. And I think it's a little bit damaging, because it lends itself to sometimes some harmful dissatisfaction. Some of that's motivating and good, but I think what's next kind of tends to inform itself if we're really focused on being all that we should be and could be in what we're doing right now. And I love your story. I mean, I love the fact that it's like, hey, this comes back, and it's not on a straight line path, and it's not on a direct sort of trail to some endpoint, but you're open to being able to say, okay, I'm going to shift, and I'm going to move to something that feels more significant. I'm going to move to something that brings different reward and better reward, or whatever. And I really feel like I don't have in our company. What I could say is that the levels left, we have senior vice presidents, we have executive vice presidents, we have the CEO of our company. So those could be next. You know, those could be things that are options. I'm a huge believer in. I don't know that my position and role today is any more rewarding or fulfilling than my role when I was a superintendent, or when I was positioning embeds to make sure that they went in place for precast to hang on the building. I have loved every position I've ever been in. And I feel like if we do our work and pursue our work with a high level of appreciation and love and you know, like engagement in the moment that we're in it, then I think that there's a lot next. You know, there's a lot of options that are always offered and available to people that are deeply invested in their life and in the lives of those around them. And I really believe that this industry is full of really, we're in the middle of, I mean, we get asked to do things that haven't been done before. We get asked to work with people we've never worked with before. And if you think about the fragile insecurity of a lot of that, it's that's formative times over and over again that you say, man, this is special. This is something different. This is a year ago I didn't even know who you were, and we're in deep water together right now. And I appreciate the hell out of what you're doing for me, for this project, for whatever that is. And those are moments that aren't available in many, many industries. I really believe like we have such a tangible, tactile, put our hands on it, put our heads into it, smell it, burnt metal, shaved wood, bad smelling J-Johns. It doesn't have portable toilets. It doesn't matter. Like, it's real. And we're kind of living in a world that a lot of people are engaged in things that there's not a tactile end to what they're doing. You know, if we're in a little different time right now with COVID going on. So
yeah, pre-COVID. Let's just pretend that.
okay.
Let's assume that it's going to get better.
That's right. You know, and I would say that some of this is based on personal preference, but I spent, like, one of the big concerns about moving up in the organization was losing connection with all that's happening on our projects, in our people's lives. And because that was my whole experience. That was my whole background. And so I really, a lot of days don't afford it, but I like starting, if it's possible, to start at a job site. And we have morning huddles that go on every job to start the day. And I just have such positive memories around rolling out and getting started for the day. And it's early and everybody's groggy and you kind of get your head back on straight. And it's a good place to start a day. The balance as a general manager is a lot of internally facing things, like how are we organized? How are we aligned? What are we doing between our estimating and pre-construction, procurement? How are we doing that from a cost standpoint? How are we managing that? And then from just business development, client focus. So there's a lot of things that from an alignment standpoint, are we working on the right things? Are we working in the right way? Are we in sync with our message and how we're communicating outward to the rest of the world? That's a big piece. And then the external facing is kind of the companion piece to that. Is like, if I'm not spending a lot of time with our clients and with our customers, potential customers, and with what the future looks like, then I'm probably not really focused in the right way either. So there's a balance of, I think if you went down the calendar, there's a balance of internal meetings, sessions, conversations, and external meetings, conversations, and sessions with people. So that's describes most of my days. And
you're able to get out on site pretty frequently too, and
I am
bump elbows with your self-performing guys and your engineers.
Yep. And certainly before, and I think this is part of the thing we break down. It's like, man, there's a lot of potential structure around roles, but I think it's we inform what what our roles are a lot, and so you just have to be. I think it's a purposeful thing. Back in April, all of our work was shut down here in the Bay. But, and then in May, when we started back up, we really couldn't go back to our sites with a full force of people, because some of our offices, we couldn't keep distance in on site, the construction offices. So actually me being there and showing up was a little bit of a grievance. Like, hey, we don't have enough space for our normalized population anyway. So like, you can just stay back, stay away for right now. But yeah, and I think part of it is that's where a lot of energy for me comes from. Is like it's necessary to say that stay connected and stay rooted in what our business really is. Purely from the interesting factor, we built a research building at Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville, Tennessee. And I was the manager on the job. So we built a ton of different things, but for me personally, and part of the scope of the job was there was an auditorium building, 1,100 seat auditorium on campus. This project was to go over the top of that building without touching it. And so from one wall to the other wall on the auditorium was 145 feet. And the building looked like a stop sign in footprint, and our building went next to it on the face of it, but totally encapsulated it. But the initial charge was we were never to shut down the auditorium. They were going to continue to host events in there, and our structure above that auditorium, you couldn't shore it or support it through the auditorium. So we designed these, we built these temporary trusses to support concrete trusses that were all cast in place, 145 feet by about 26 feet tall. And they had a series of tendons running through them, bridge type tendons, 36 strand tendons and 2.5 inch dowel, threaded dowels. It was all encapsulated, like it was open to where you could apply tension to the ends of these things, and then put 2 floors on, come back and put more tension on them, put 2 floors on, come back and put more tension. So that job, from a difficulty, not ever going to experience that. We had 4 what they called super trusses that were cast in place. Each truss was 53 individual concrete pours. So they were about 500 wet tons of concrete in each truss. And so you couldn't do it all at once. And we had this temporary structure that got embedded and left in place to actually make that happen. And then after the truss level was done, that became the gridded foundation for the column structures above. And we stage stressed those trusses over the course of the 15 stories that the building became. And it was just completely crazy. And nobody working on that job had ever done anything like that. So we were in a little ways like just completely figuring things out. And we had a great team, great contractors, excellent people that worked. But it was definitely a life-shortening job in terms of
no doubt. And you're building, not only are you building this thing and then stressing it as you go, right?
Yeah.
Because every time you stress it, there's always a chance that something pops. I mean, that's happened, but you're already, and you're over another building already, right?
And there was no, I mean, sorry, you could look it up. It's called MRB4, Medical Research Building number 4. They didn't get too creative on the naming, but and if you look it up and you see it, it's a glass. You don't even see the auditorium now. It's a glass building, and it was connected to the first phase of that job, which was a vertical overbuild, 3 stories on top of an existing 8-story building. And the entire time, it's on an active campus. So they gave us about 100 square feet to lay down any materials or whatever. So we set up a little fence, but anything that was on the edge of the building was on the edge of an active pedestrian walkway.
Wow.
It was a mind-stretching project. And value is a little different based on, so the value of work here in California is super expensive. The largest dollar value job was one in San Jose as a hospital. It was just under $500 million. A project in Kentucky that I was responsible for was a much greater scope, much larger scope, 800,000 square feet, brand new hospital on a 100-acre site with a bunch of features around it. And that job was 300 million. So in terms of overall size and scale, it was the largest job. But in terms of dollar volume, the one out here has the highest dollar volume. And most of the work we do, the vast majority in any given year, we'd say we finish about 15 to 1,600 projects a year. And really the vast majority of the projects, even though we're a large company, are all on, $10 million, $20 million and under. Below that, and then there's the highlight reel projects that get a lot of attention, but that's really not the majority of our work. And so, like when we did the Kings Arena and the 49ers Stadium here, and those projects grab a lot of headlines, but that really doesn't occupy the majority of our focus and work. And really, even on those big jobs, I feel like one of the things is that there's a little bit of a drug with that somehow you think that because it's bigger, things will, like, people know and things will figure themselves out, whatever. And really, we're still just shoveling dirt. Like we still need to go one shovelful after the next and be very, very focused around the details of the work and not get consumed in the scale of it. It's easy to do. Generally speaking, I love the variety. I love the newness of things. I love the people that come into our business new. I love the restarts and the reoccurring beginnings of things. I think it's just it's always different. It's always something that is going to be challenging, even if we apply some of the same skills to it. It's just an opportunity to do what we did 2 years before, a year before, 6 months before, 6 days before, in a better way. and there's a real opportunity for that. So from a work standpoint, and I say that so much around really what comes to mind most is and this is a little cliche, but it's true, is that there's exceptional people that you meet, and I think there's just there's a high level. We're not always accused of being. I think as an industry, I remember coming out of college, I was like, well, there was a low confidence factor in the reliability of the construction industry. Like it was, they had to do these scales and most respected industries, all these things. But I think generally speaking, like people are very honest in their feedback. They're very honest in what they do, and the work has that sort of tone and texture to it. So people are very quick to open up about their own experience and their learning and where they're at. And I think that's very, very cool. I just think it's been a blessing in my own experience. And so I love that aspect of our work. I think difficulty right now, we get graded as a business, and it doesn't matter whether we're putting boards together or putting metal stairs together. Cost is a basic thing. Schedule is a critical thing. We're a time-driven industry. Quality is a big thing, and general level of service. And I think some of the hardest parts of the work is the most difficult aspects of the work is that if we have faltered in our level of service or our level of quality, those are challenging, disheartening moments and conversations, and for everybody involved. But there's not a lot of encouragement or motivation around that. It's like that's a reflection on our attention, our focus, our commitment, and that happens in our business. Something fails, something comes up short, gets interrupted, and those are realities. But in terms of a challenge, if you're saying, hey, what are the bad days? The bad days are the worst days are when if there's a safety incident. Yeah. It just recenters everything. When somebody gets hurt, you're like, man, none of this matters to the person that's hurt at that point. And so we work really hard to try to minimize that. But those are things like, it's easy to forget our industry has a ton of risk to it that's personal safety related. And I grew up, when I was working, I didn't know how to spell PPE. There was not a focus around those things. And one guy that taught me I think was a good mentor for life at the time, carpenter's name is Bear Frankson, and he fell off a 2-story roof one morning, and he's never worked in this industry since that time. And it was just a big, those are things that you say, man, those are things you want to work and plan to avoid. But anytime safety or quality comes into question, those are the hardest parts of work for me.
Yeah, the safety thing, I've witnessed a few safety accidents, and we definitely talk a lot about safety, and it's certainly changed since when I was learning in the trades. I earned my way through college in the trades, and it's definitely changed since then, and for the better, really. Yeah. What was the safety thing? It's funny, teaching my kids, teaching the students about that sort of variability. Like sometimes you just have to say, look, something happened. I teach them the real construction. I teach them that, it's like I told clients, I say, look, it's going to take longer and it's going to cost more money, right? It's just end of story. As a remodeler, it's like, I'm sure if I can open up your whole house before I can give you an exact bid, right? But, and that sort of thing. And there's just change. Stuff happens, just stuff happens. So
I would say, Chris, too, one of the things that's been, I think, really beneficial as you're thinking about, I think one of the mind shifts I've done quite a bit of work that has been what you would call lean focused work, and we did project delivery. That job I was referring to in Kentucky was integrated project delivery, but that was all about having a common agreement around with the engineer, the architect, and we're all tied together. It is pretty, if you think about, like the whole switching the conversation from an either or, like I can be safe and I can be productive. I can be, and in fact, let's just say this, like there's a whole mantra on that job. I am inclined to say little things matter a lot. So if we're working in a clean space, it's organized, it's ordered. I don't know about anybody else, but if I'm doing projects on the weekend right now, the state is that I spend about 45 minutes looking for the tool, and then I spend about 15 minutes using the tool, and it's just horribly inefficient. But if we're organized and we're clean, we're also safer and we're more productive. So it's just one small example, and there's a lot of opportunities as you think about as we think about things in our industry like prefabrication. And if I can fabricate, we used to build these big bell tower entrances. That was the mode for houses at the time. But we would try to build as 100% of that laying on the ground forklift, because it is so much quicker to grab a block, make a cut, do something else, nail it off on the ground than working 25 feet up in the air. So that's the same thing whether we're putting piping in or anything we're doing. If I can do it off the ladder, I'm safer, I'm faster, and generally the quality is better. So there's a bunch of and sort of solutions, like I want to do this and this and this. How do I plan the work to be able to do that? I think that's a good, I'll give one example. When I was the same man that I was referring to, Bear, I thought I was fast and quick, and I was like going through it. I'm cutting all the stud lengths. It was on an irregular length wall. And he said, and it was over 8 feet tall, so you need a line of fire blocks in it at the ceiling line. And he says, man, you might be fast, but now you got to go and pick up all those block ends and cut your 14.5-inch blocks out of them, when you could have just measured from the end of the stud and made all the cuts while you were in the same place. And I was like, yeah, pretty ignorant, but it's those things, even at that point in time. And on those things, the more we can think about combining our effort into a common, safer, quicker solution, there's a lot of opportunity that we miss. And we just go back to, like whatever we saw or whatever we visit. So that's part of a motivation for us, for me too, is like, and if we understand those things at the trade level, then collectively the whole is so much more effective, better, higher quality. Outcomes are much better.
I think it's kind of a tough question for you because you seem pretty level-headed, and you sound like you always were pretty level-headed. But I think there's got to be something.
Yeah, I have a couple things that come to mind. One is that I spent a lot of wasted time in sort of headspace of thinking of work as a separate entity from life. And we kind of got into this thing about work-life balance, and it got into, the general contracting world, that became, for our company, that was a real thing. And that's a new generation thing. Like, like when your occupation and your work was something that you were consumed with. When you're a farmer, you don't say, well, the farm is my work, but my life is something else. Right. I mean, you're 20 hours a day a farmer. And most farmers I know love what they do. They don't act like life is something different than work. And so that's a little bit of like embracing the reality that we're going to spend a lot of time in what we do, and make it a great time. Make it something that matters, that's meaningful. And it kind of relates to, if I'd say like, I think it's also sometimes easy to say, well, these are people that I work with, but they're not necessarily in my personal circle or whatever. And I think that's there's a lot of hogwash to that. But that was what, younger self, that was kind of where I was at. And I think it's like I would tell myself, man, tell people what you think about them more readily, more without being asked. Tell them what you appreciate about them. Tell them what you don't appreciate. Ask more questions. I never felt like that was a big obstacle for me. I love learning and I wanted to learn, but our industry is full of silent teachers, and a lot of people need to know you're interested before they're going to start talking. And so that's maybe on the advice thing, but I think that's a good reflection. I mean, like I also feel like it's easy to get when you come out of school and whatever, and you're like, well, what the question, famous question, what are you working for? What are you trying to accomplish? And it's always a what question. And but ultimately, when things get difficult, and work gets difficult, all life gets difficult, and ultimately we resolve around who we're working for. And that could be a spouse, could be a child, it could be a father, a mother, it could be the people next to you. But I think it's I would have got there a lot quicker in saying, stop worrying about what you're working for and start worrying about who you're working for, because that's what pulls us through. And really, we're not inspired by the whats, and we're not really inspired by objects and materials. We're usually deeply inspired by individuals that took some time and made an investment in us. So, that's a two-way thing. Sometimes when we're young, we feel like, well, what do I have to offer? But interest is a big thing. Curiosity is a big thing. Listening is a big thing for people that are outside of our generation and connection to that. And so, don't undervalue what you offer and what you bring to the equation of human connection. I would say this, and this is maybe a little more poetic than what people believe, but I think it's absolutely true. There's nothing like, it doesn't matter whether you're a poet or a playwright, or in some other business, but the act of creating and building and developing something and seeing something from raw materials or just sticks and bricks. And like you said, I mean, concrete is amazing in many ways because it's such simple material that performs way beyond its base roots. And I feel like for us, this business, it may not be, and for many, many people, it's not going to be the last thing that you do. But the idea of doing something difficult and doing things that haven't been done before and creating something and building something that absolutely requires a lot of other people and a lot of our fellow citizens in humanity to do that is a skill and is an experience that translates into every other thing going on in our world. And sometimes I think it's one of the most connected, and if you're ever going to get that and feel it and have it be obvious, I can't think of another business, another industry that it becomes more obvious quicker. And there's a lot of challenge, but I think if you can face down some of the things of like, I mean, there's been many projects. I think everybody that's in this business, so you look at a project on the onset, you're like, okay, how am I going to do that? How am I going to deal with this particular owner or client, the stringent requirements, the contract, whatever it is. And when you get out on those skinny branches and put yourself in that risk position, it just opens up the possibility of saying, if I could do it there, this doesn't look so scary for this next round.